All right, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to Dudes Talking. These people are not good people with Greg McCarron. How are you doing this evening, Greg?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me again.
Oh, I'm anytime, brother. I appreciate the work that you and Jeremy Rothkushel are doing over on the Antedote YouTube channel. I've been listening to you guys for a long time. Of course, Greg, you've been on many times here on my show. We have a lot of mutual listeners that are both fans of the both of us. So definitely glad. You're one of my trusted people to discuss news events with, and it's very interesting. What's been going on. We've been wanting to do this stream for a while, but we've both been really busy. And I, I mean, the title sums it up, right? These people are not good people, right? I mean, we discuss it all the time of how these people aren't our guys, and
Yeah.
and so why don't we start with the debate last night between Council for National Policy member, speaker while he was vice president, and ardent Zionist Mike Pence versus um, Obama administration CFR lover, you know, ardent socialist Kamala Harris. Neither one of them are good people. But what did you think about it?
I thought it was pretty. I thought it was pretty sad. I mean, I would say I guess from a standpoint, like if I had to look at the two candidates in particular, just by appearance wise, I thought, I don't know, I thought Harris had a kind of a smarminess about her that
Yes.
wasn't very, that was not very appealing in the slightest bit. But then, immediately, like, if I was somebody who just didn't know much about this stuff and looked at it like that, I'd probably put a lot of stock into that. But then you just think about, what all the terrible interest that somebody like Mike Pence represents. And so if I was into aesthetics and not being very knowledgeable, I'd probably see something like that. But ultimately, you come back to realize to the fact that you really don't have a choice in this whole thing. I guess something I found amazing, John, and this is something I think you and I have like tried to convey a point to amongst people. I know you particularly, John, is coming from a more of a conservative Christian perspective on this. It's something you've struggled with is trying to get your base, people who follow your work, to understand, that as you call it, the right side of the world order is just as corrupt and just as criminal as far as the activities it's involved in and implicated in and complicit in as the left side. And in some cases, I think even more so. There are excesses on both sides, but that's one of the things you try to make a point of. And what I found amazing, I noticed this during the presidential debate with Trump and Biden, and I noticed this again last night, particularly during the foreign policy aspect or portion of the vice presidential debate, is that what is amazing dynamics going on under Trump is that, and this might be hard for people to see as far as like who might be a little more alt media oriented, conspiracy culture oriented, and there's like this rightward bend within that culture to a large extent, I would say. And it's very hard to really see that, like, not only is Donald Trump a servant of these very, very powerful, very corrupt interests in a very marked way, but also that the media and the opposing party has been complicit, I would say, pretty much every step of the way in enabling and running cover for these crimes that are taking place within this administration under the guise of opposition. So you have all of this media hysteria about how everybody hates Trump and everybody's out to get poor Trump. Yet Joe Biden, when Joe Biden did not press back on some of the issues that really would have caused a resonance with, as far as like actually exposing actual corruption from the Trump operation. For example, Trump
But
was
Joe
able
Biden's
to.
just as corrupt too. There's no
Well,
way he.
sure he is, but
There's no way he could. That's the thing, is they're both in
well,
bed with the same people.
I agree with you on that. But I mean, here's the thing. I'll give you an example. Donald Trump's just able to throw out Hunter Biden's name nonstop. Not one time did Joe Biden bring up any of the Trump children and their scandals and their corruption, much less Jared Kushner, the prodigal son-in-law that I guess you're
Very
not
true.
allowed to represent. So I mean, that's what I mean by like this whole thing of this guise of like hatred and disdain for the president. Donald Trump's just out there throwing out all kinds of things about Hunter Biden and the Biden family's corruption. And meanwhile, Joe Biden can say Russia without context a million times until he's red in the face, and no one will, it won't mean a single thing, or will not mean a thing. But there's very real areas, very obvious areas where somebody like Trump can be really hit hard, and really, very few people, certainly in the political establishment, are willing to really hit those areas. It happened in 2016, and it's happening now in 2020, where there's still damage control being done, even in the area of the revelations around like the tax returns. There's still damage control being done to kind of make Donald Trump look more like an incompetent buffoon of a poor excuse of a business person, rather than somebody who's been involved in the lack of tax paying is directly related to all kinds of schemes and crimes and criminal that have taken place within his organizations and within his properties for decades now. And so, that's what I'm getting at with they don't hit where it can really count. And I noticed this last night in the vice presidential debate as well, where, Kamala Harris mentioned Russian bounties without any context. Meanwhile, there's so many areas like Trump Pence could be hit at in terms of really proving actual foreign collusion that goes beyond just unproven, MSM reports about alleged bounties, or an Atlantic writer, former Israeli prison guard, Atlantic writer, claiming that Donald Trump said that military personnel are losers. There's so many ways that you can hit them in provable instances of outright criminality that do not get touched.
Well, yeah, on both sides, even when Trump's hitting, Joe Biden with Hunter Biden, he's not being like, he's going to talk about Burisma, but not Skokovo. And he's not going to dare, address the Silk Road, the Belt Road Initiative, with Israel, Switzerland being the funder, Russia, and China. So, they're not going to dare bring any of that up. The debates are limited hangouts, man. And the media is going to, both parties and the media are complicit in covering up the crimes that they're involved in. And it makes it very difficult. Today I got blocked by someone on Twitter who is a conservative. I don't know if they're a conservative Christian, though. And, she was posting the stuff about Regeneron's new monoclonal antibody. Because, people were going after, the Trump administration, the United States government, pouring millions upon millions of dollars into it, and Trump's calling it a cure from God. When, if you've done any research into the actual monoclonal antibody itself, it comes from a aborted fetal cell kidney tissue germline, since that was done in the 1970s in one of the Scandinavian countries. I don't remember exactly which one. I think the Netherlands, but don't quote me on that. And so people were like, well, how is this a gift from God when, it was taken from an aborted baby to
imagine if this were the Democrats.
To be able to produce the medication. Now, the spokesman for Regeneron spokeswoman was like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she was pretty much, well, it's just semantics, like it's not really from aborted tissue to produce the monoclonal antibodies. I've heard that time and time again, but when you look at the research papers, they're all referencing it as being from that, kidney germline. And no matter how many times the cells replicate for medical study, or for the development of drugs, or the production of vaccines like you have with the polio vaccine that comes from aborted lung tissue, it's still going to have some residual human DNA. You couldn't really purge it all no matter how many times the cell replicates. I just don't see that as being possible. And so when you look at the studies, they still reference it as such. And that's why she said you can call it semantics. Well, she didn't directly say it, but she alluded. I'll get exactly what she said, so I can read it. But that's what she alluded to is you can call it semantics, And I'm like, no, it's not semantics. but so it's very interesting that I was getting an argument again with a conservative. Mind you, about like why would I expect arguing arguing about this with a progressive that that's pro-abortion. Not every progressive is pro-abortion, but when you're looking at the difference between the right and the left, a lot of them are, right. So that's what you expect, but I didn't expect it to come out of this. I was arguing with a conservative. I was like, wait, what? Like, why am I arguing with you that Trump shouldn't be saying this drug's a gift from God? When did we start trusting big pharma? I mean, these people are not good people.
Well, John, it might be a gift from God, but what some of these maybe more evangelical-leaning conservative people don't understand is that it might not be the same God. It might be a reference to a different God than what they believe, that they've been led to believe the Trump-Pence ticket represents. There might be that in play as well.
Well, I mean, okay, so the actual, yes, with the you're talking about with the spiritual advisors at the White House, like the New Apostolic Reformation heretic Paula White. So the cell line is HEK293T. And it was in the Netherlands. It came from an aborted fetus in the Netherlands in the 1970s. But so much time has passed and the cells have divided so much that scientists no longer consider them to involve abortion. A Regeneron spokeswoman said the cell lines available today are not considered fetal tissue. Huh. I beg, and she goes, her name's Alexandra Bowie, and she goes, it's how you want to parse it, Greg.
Well, if this was Barack Hussein and this was going on, I don't think it would be a matter of semantics and linguistics and how you parse it or how you term it or how you perceive it.
So yeah, it's really interesting that's how she frames the context. It's how you want to parse it. So someone like me would say, well, I mean, the germ line from the T93 T cell, it's epithelial cell from aborted kidney tissue. I don't like the way that it was gone about, getting that, And then again, we can argue, should we really be growing medicine in human cells? But that's for another debate. But, we are putting in hundreds of millions of dollars as taxpayers. The United States is giving Regeneron to make their monoclonal antibody treatment.
I mean, anything that I guess in this world, this milieu that Trump's in, anything that he says or does is automatically going to be touted as this as a gift or whatever, because no matter how terrible it is, we have to spin things and make them out to be wonderful and great. And I mean, it's interesting Trump touted hydroxychloroquine forever, and now he seems to not have a word to say about it anymore. So he's kind of moved on to the next, quote, miracle cure. I find that interesting.
Yeah, I guess he didn't take hydroxychloroquine. The doctors didn't advise him to do so. Instead, he took remdesivir. So, I mean, yeah. When did we start? I mean, look, the big pharma, they're not good people, Greg. Okay? And not necessarily the people working with, big pharma, the techs and stuff like that. The people alone, the total poll, not them. They're just trying to do their best. I'm talking about the heads of the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, one of the biggest ones that I could give example to is Purdue Pharmaceutical with the Sackler family. And they're marketing that OxyContin was not addicting. It personally affected my household. My father got back on opioids because they told him it was not addicting. It angers me to no end. The Sacklers should be punished greatly in the eyes of the law. It's just extremely upsetting that people now. Did you see the clip of Alex Jones on Right Wing Watch? And I shared it with Lee Veltman, where Alex Jones is saying that the Trump vaccine that's going to come out is going to be different. There's going to be a good vaccine that's going to come out. It's going to be the Trump vaccine.
look, I haven't seen that. It does not surprise me because, I caught, Alex has been attempting to, and that reminds me, oh my gosh, and this is a new clip.
Yes,
Oh
yes.
my gosh.
Yeah,
I mean,
see, and
this is,
I talked about the guy from Right Wing Watch. I forgot his name. What's his name?
Jared Holt.
Jared Hall. He does have a disdain for, I believe, for conservatives and Christians
Sure.
in general. But that doesn't mean that some of his clips he's not right.
Yeah. Well,
right about calling him out because a broken clock is right twice a day.
Well, John, there's a reason why Rick Wiles from True News was sounded celebratory at the idea of Right Wing Watch people being rounded up and executed in the streets. So.
Well, then again, he claimed there was a Jew coup. So I mean, and you and Jeremy have talked about that on your show.
What's interesting about Right Wing Watch? I want to get back to that clip you mentioned in a second, and some of this stuff with Trump's got COVID and the various reactions to it in a second. But what's interesting about Right Wing Watch is that Right Wing Watch basically, while it really does nail these a lot of these people with some of the really obviously problematic and awful things that are said by so many with this right wing milieu, combination of alternative media and some of the more obviously corrupt, compromised, pseudo Christian interests as far as within the evangelical movement as we know it in the United States. On the other hand, though, it's not, there's not actually being exposed per se. What's happening is that it's kind of similar to, it's like Bill Maher with more actual substance. Bill Maher Bill Maher loves to mock Christians and make them out to be these crazy, loony people, an example. And that's why InfoWars has been portrayed for the longest time, because InfoWars, Alex Jones has been the face of the kooky, crazy conspiracy theorists. But what it does actually, Jeremy, my co-host, Jeremy Roth-Kushel, sent me a clip of Right Wing Watch claiming that it was a Jerome Corsi clip from early 2018, I believe, with Lionel, the used car salesman. And in this clip, Jerome Corsi's talking about, speculating about Antonin Scalia possibly being involved in pedophilia, and that this may have been a factor in his death at that ranch in Texas in February 2016. What's interesting about that is that Right Wing Watch puts this out without any type of anything, and ultimately there's an example of, regardless of, look, I don't have, there's no proof of anything with Scalia, but there's some, there is some fire, there is some smoke to the fire at some level or another if you really look into it. But the way Right Wing Watch portrays this is that, this is just another kook putting out batshit crazy conspiracy stuff, and so that's the way it's portrayed. There's never these people are just crazy nutcases, and meanwhile what they're doing is they're actually very important figures in terms of shaping and perpetuating the Alex Jones is not just some otherwise irrelevant crazy conspiracy theorist. It's way more than that. Right Wing Watch of the world downplay the realities of what these people represent. I'll give you an example, John. You talk about these people a lot. Let's talk about somebody like Lance Walnew or Rick Joyner. Okay,
yes, of course. Those people are not good people.
Of them. Yeah, they play clips of them. Okay, they sound crazy, but they're very influential, and that's what you miss when you just try to portray them as, because it almost allows the public to let their guard down if you're just putting them out there as these crazy people with they're just ineffectual, crazy people. They might incite a few people to go out and maybe want to commit domestic terrorist acts, but otherwise they're irrelevant. That is the furthest thing from the truth, and they're actually downplaying the danger that people like that present by just making them out to be crazy people.
Yeah, of course. Boykin is Council for National Policy member for almost longer than a decade now, and is part of the Committee on Present Danger China. But he's also part of the weird Florida Priory of the Sovereign Knights of Malta, which is the CMP Protestant LARPing as Knights of Malta. I don't know what it is. They're actually sued by the real Knights of Malta. I don't know. But Boykin and Walnew is a part of it too. People aren't good people.
No, they're not.
They make Christians like me Like,
Yeah.
non-believers look at them and they're like, these people are insane. And I'm like,
And
well, yeah, while he was trying to push off his Trump Cyrus prophecy and his, how does Trump want to write a book called Trump, God's Chaos Candidate? It's like, wait, what? Like, chaos magic? Like, what does this have to do with God,
John,
the Father, and Jesus Christ? Like, what the heck?
Speaking of charlatans operating in the name of God, the firefighter prophet Mark Taylor says that oppose God is to oppose Trump is to oppose God himself. So.
Oh Lord, Lee Veltman always talks to me about Mark Taylor. He brings him up, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not Lee. No, I'm not Lee.
But it's going back to this. I mean, like, but this is like, and ultimately, John, who is made to look bad from like these people who are masquerading in the name of God, in the name of Christ, as far as like when the right wing watches of the world make them out to be like the actual representatives of the Christian faith and of Christianity and of Christian values. It's people like you that ultimately are the ones that are, and that's done by design. I mean, you're under the guise of like exposing these people. Really, what you're doing is you're downplaying and you're minimizing the actual effects they're having, while using this ultimately as a means to bludgeon against, say, more conservative, religious-minded people with conservative values, conservative religious values, to make them look like they are just like, really you use that to smear and tar and brush millions of believers as being just like this, and ultimately it's a means to try to discredit people with with conservative Christian leanings, rather than actually trying to expose the criminality of the operations the Rick Joyners and the Lance Wallnews and the Jerry Boykins of the world are involved in, and the Alex Joneses for that matter.
Yeah, that's the thing is with Jared Holt, it's more of mocking because he, that's how he is. With me, I'm like,
it's kind of like Bill Maher. It's a more serious Bill Maher to some level.
I lean right. A lot of my beliefs would be considered to be on the right, side. And I'm a Christian. And so I'm yelling at these people like Lance Wallnew, and I'm like, what are you doing? I know it's talked about in the New Testament extensively that there will be wolves out there and they're going to try to lead the sheep astray and false teachers, and I understand that. But it's like, come on. And then I get called a liberal commie because I'm trying to hold, conservative. Like, I see Mark Pantano on Twitter. Now, he's not a conspiracy researcher like you and I are as much. He's still kind of a mainline conservative, but he's still upset over what's going on and thinks that the, conservatives, all of them, are just as bad as the Democrats. He at least understands the left-right paradigm is bullcrap. I've been listening to his podcast, Surviving Liberty, and it's pretty good for just being that basic narrative. All right, I do enjoy him on Twitter, and he's just disgusted by it all, man. He's just super just disgusted by it, and so and I get it, I try to hold these people accountable so much. Now, granted, look, if Biden wins, I don't think he will. I just don't think he will. But if Biden wins, then I'm gonna be, I'm gonna shift focus, because the right wing of the world, if there truly is a blue tsunami wave, which I don't think is gonna happen, all right, then if that's the case, then there's not gonna be much covering this. There's not gonna be much need to cover the CNP as much except when they rear their ugly head, So then I got to shift more to the CFR, Atlantic Council, Brookings Institution side of things. I'm gonna have to do a shift. Not to say that the CNP is not going to be there running things, but to some degree. But they won't be the one that's dominant in that position like during the Obama administration, So so I guess then people will be okay with me then. I guess I don't know. But so let's play. I want to play the Alex Jones clip for you real quick so you can get a good laugh in. All right, you ready? Greg?
Oh, yeah, let's go for it. Yes, I have not heard this yet.
If we let them normalize all of this tyranny and their COVID power grab and their free speech annihilations and all their physical attacks, then we will go under their tyranny and they would have broken our will. To defeat Trump, Bolsonaro, and others around the world that are patriots, if they're able to successfully silence you and I, that they're going to move to a level very, very quick of unthinkable oppression and total control. That's why they're admitting that the new force inoculations coming next year will actually maim and kill a lot of people because Bill Gates knows he can't hide it. That's why Trump is taking control of the process, saying he's going to have an early vaccine from a company that doesn't make one that is so dangerous or that doesn't change our DNA. And I'm not even endorsing us right now.
I'm not even endorsing it.
But if we let them normalize.
You heard him? Did you hear him?
Oh, yeah.
Screw you, Alex Jones. The horse you rode in on.
I mean, it's crazy, but I mean, I heard this, like, we've talked about among ourselves, John, like the dynamic in InfoWars where you have like David Knight kind of maybe, maybe sincere, but like the devil's advocate role where he will criticize, the vaccines. It kind of tells some truth about like the big business interests that are as far as like that are being represented through this and how bad this is. But then you'll have Alex Jones and Owen Short or whoever else come on air and constantly say that no, this is not what's going on. This is reverse psychology. Of course, Alex Jones a couple months ago threw out the caveat that he cannot even begin to actually be serious about that. If this actually is a bad vaccine, like we've been warning about for decades, we'll call him out so fast, heads will spin, which is not going to happen. I promise you that.
No,
but,
it's not going to happen.
Like, he throws that out there as like a means of like security or insurance, but ultimately the narrative, by and large, coming from the Alex Joneses, and by the way, this is very much in line with some of the QAnon proponents, like. The Jordan Sathers of the, some of the QAnon proponents of the world, that once again, this is where InfoWars and QAnon kind of more or less still meet up, despite the facade or the image or the idea of like a serious split taking place, is that ultimately, this is reverse psychology. It's not what it seems to be. If there's a Trump vaccine, it's going to be a good thing. If it's Jordan Sather or Praying Medic or whoever, they're red pilling the Democrats into being anti-vaccination by promoting a vaccine. Or if you're Alex Jones, it's reverse psychology. You see Trump's, it's not going to be what it seems to be. And now you're coming out with this, now it's going to be a good thing. And this is the good vaccine. These people, there is nothing they will not say to continue to push their narratives, and it's really sad. And it is just this is a really sad time as far as like, I knew alternative media was bad, but like it keeps getting stooping to worse and worse depths as far as like just how bad the narratives and talking points can get. And this is the latest example of that. I mean, they are directly complicit in the in what is going on right now.
Yeah, it's gotten really bad. We'll see. I keep watching the Twitter, and overall, many people who are true believers in QAnon are still the vaccine is a very, very much issue for them, Greg. I don't think even if they come up with this spin about there's a Trump vaccine, I just don't think they'll take it, man. I've seen too many polls, which makes me kind of have hope. It did anger me greatly when Mike Pence, who could have just left it alone, Mike Pence could have just easily just have left it alone about the vaccine. Saying that Kamala Harris is a vaccine denier, and that she's anti-science. To kind of get that jab in. And when he made it last night, I was like, man, this is not four-dimensional chess. You would use that if they really truly were white hats, if these people were truly our guys, but they're not good people. They would have used that to their advantage. It would have been like, yeah, you're right, we would have delayed, but yeah, we're pumping so much money into Operation Warp Speed, millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, and the military is involved with it. I've even done more research showing that the people that work with the places like the Health and Human Services that are put on the Operation Warp Speed hierarchy document, a lot of them are ex-military, and a lot of them work with DARPA. So it's like, how much military is really involved? And then Kushner's on there. The military is reporting to Jared Kushner. It's like, wow, really? You really want
John,
Kushner to be involved?
You brought up an interesting note there with. You just brought up an interesting note though in reference to you brought up an interesting note there with Pence using the anti-vaccine line. There's an interesting, and this brings up something I think we talked about this before, but something I identified in terms of some of the conservative talk radio I have the unfortunate misprivilege of hearing more often than I'd like to, based on my working conditions and as far as like my where I'm at as far as work goes and being in a car for much of the day on weekdays. But it's very interesting that you have like the entire like alt media that's around Trump is built around this whole, the vaccines are evil and we're going to fight the vaccines no matter what. Of course, that's changing now with Trump, as you mentioned, right? As far as like the way this is being spun to be the good vaccine. But, they see, they're the anti-vaxxers and they're seen as the enemy, like, the people who follow a lot of alternative conspiracy-oriented media. But then meanwhile, you've got people in the conservative talk radio sphere, people like the Epperson, Council for National Policy Dynasty, Salem Broadcasting, Hugh Hewitt saying that the Democrats are anti-vaccine conspiracy theorists. And it's really funny because like these people, the Hugh Hewitts of the world, VSA, the Council for National Policy, and their offshoots, they're not more than 2 or 3 degrees separated from like the furthest depths of like QAnon basically, in certain in many ways. And you've got one narrative that says that these people are that the Democrats, the evil left is trying to push the vaccines as a means to like enslave us and make people sick, and it's being anti-vaccine is the right side of history. And then you've got these people, the Hugh Hewitts, who ultimately at the end of the day are pushing the same bigger overall pro-Trump narrative that the rest of the alternative media is pushing. They're calling the Democrats the anti-vaccine conspiracy theorists for opposing Trump's vaccine. So which is it? Are vaccines evil? Or are vaccines good? I mean, is it vaccine good if it's only Trump that does it? I mean, which is it?
I guess we'll see. It's a 100-dimensional backgammon until the vaccine's actually there. Of course, Trump said during the debate that the military is going to deliver 200,000 doses a day, I think is what he said, which would take years before the entire country's vaccinated. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But no matter what, it's interesting to me. It seems to be no longer that people have principles when it comes to their conservatism. In that it's no longer, okay, I have these conservative principles. The president is either fulfilling them or not fulfilling them. And when he's not fulfilling them, I'm going to call him out for not doing it. But they're not even doing that anymore. It's worship of Donald Trump as like the God Emperor. They could do no wrong in their eyes. And it's a problem. Now, granted, there are, it's not for everyone. There are some people who admit that though they like Trump, there are a few things that he has done or some things that he has done that they don't like. Those people do exist out there, but they're few and far between the people that I see in Twitter, where they all just, it's almost like they like prostrate themselves in front of the king. It's ridiculous.
And also, I will say there are some cases of some people in alternative media who will criticize Trump, but it will be a very weaponized criticism, whereas like it's almost like a criticism for the wrong reasons or for things that aren't actually going on. Or it will be, you also see this tendency of there will be criticism of the Trump administration, but it will also be done under the guise of, well, it's everyone and everything except for Trump himself. So
yeah, I could see that.
I mean, that happens a lot too, I think.
It does. But I mean, what are we going to do about it,
I mean, and so it's, and this brings up something interesting, John. This is going back to what I was saying earlier about like where even the Democrats, like even the so-called opposition to Trump, Pence, are not actually exposing what is really, a lot of what is really going on with the, the Trump operation, as far as everything from Trump's background and to the current moment in terms of shedding any sort of serious light on like the very real collusion that is taking place on a global scale to ensure this Trump, basically power grab here in this country, and what that goes long hand in glove with Brexit and stuff that's been going on throughout Europe and globally in terms of like this shift in the Middle East and other aspects of things, is that it really frustrates me because you see that like there's not any real in terms like within like the mainstream, Democratic establishment or any of our major media publications, say New York Times, CNN, etc. There's really not a serious full-fledged attempt to actually try to expose the Trump operation for what it is. And this brings me up what you're saying here about these people who cannot see any wrong in Trump and this and that. It's a lot of, and I hate to say this because, my mom is one of these people and I love my mom dearly, and she's not somebody who's lost her mind. She's rational and she's sane and she's able to, think somewhat critically. But by and large, I mean, I've learned this by taking in a lot of talk radio and a lot of Republican talking points in general, as far as, a lot of pro-Trump. Trump supporters, by and large, at this point, unfortunately, conservative-minded people who still support this president. I hate to say this, John, but they're living by and large in an alternate reality where their reality is not how the world is actually working in this moment.
But then again, who do they have? They have Joe Biden. So they have...
I get that.
It's like, the 2004 George W. Bush versus John Kerry, but the Council for National Policy through John Kenneth Blackwell and Karl Rove rig it so that George W. Bush wins because he wins Ohio, And so when it comes to Biden and Trump, it's like, okay, so what flavor of the world order do you want? It's something that even, Mark Pontano on Twitter has been talking about, where it's like, really, what has Trump done? Now, there's some things that Trump has done, like you could argue possibly with any administration, that people would agree with, but you have to wonder if there's an alternative, ulterior motive to it. Like, I'm fine that he didn't sign... I'm glad he didn't sign the TPP. I'm glad we're out of the Paris Climate Accords. There's a few things that I could be like, yeah, okay, fine, But the thing is that doesn't make Trump by any stretch of the imagination our guy. And the New World Order has marched on, my belief, under the guise of being hidden. Very much ground was gained by the world order because Trump was in office.
Right.
Because you have, half of the truth movement or more being divided, no longer looking at the president like they did equally with George W. Bush, like they did with Barack Hussein Obama. The truth movement despised both of them equally. But now, half or more of the truth movement looks as Trump as being for them, their guy, the God Emperor, or Q plus. So it's just so what are we gonna do?
And outside of that, we also have this is somewhat of a smaller segment of the truth community, alternative media oriented community, as we know it. But there are also some people, and I will say there are some people, I will give them credit, are willing to who do not see Trump as like this great figure or anything, as far as like this great, they don't see Trump like that. They're actually very critical of Trump. But ultimately, thanks to some of like the prevalent conventional wisdom, say, in the alt media, with the combination of things, everything from like the idea of what globalism and the New World Order is, to even in that very much fits in with like the segment of a lot of a conventional alternative media wisdom, is that this whole COVID thing, it's borderline hoax. The basic, we've talked many times about that. We'll talk about that in the future. But through these prevalent kind of almost like the nature of conspiracy-oriented culture, even people who are like in these circles, who may not be a right or left per se, but see Trump as a problem and see this current moment as a problem, ultimately because they're either beholden to certain things of like, as far as like, the idea of globalism of the New World Order, or certain aspects about COVID, or certain unwillingness to confront maybe the roles of foreign countries such as Russia in the current moment of our time. They're still, I think, unable to see, like, really make sense of like what I definitely see, what I myself and my co-host Jeremy Roth-Kushel see as the danger of this moment with this Trump operation, with people like Bill Barr in the driver's seat in terms of having the ability to, having so much power in their hands at this current moment. And so, there's a lot of dynamics at play, and this is just another one of them, in addition to the obvious people who just can see Trump as somebody who can do no wrong or whatnot. Mm-hmm. There's also people who are more nuanced in that regard, but still like they're taken in by certain things. So there's a failure, I think, all across the board to understand and recognize what I strongly believe is the danger of this moment.
Yeah, I could see that. Sparkle in the chat asks, do you think Trump is racist? It's kind of a loaded question, like, not to say that you're asking it on purpose as being a loaded question, but it's kind of, do I think Trump is a racist? Well, no. If we're looking at the standard definition of racism, that one believes that their race or a race is superior after all over all races, and all races are inferior to their race, then no. I don't think Trump's a racist. I don't know how you feel about that, Greg. I don't, based off of that, if we're doing strictly the textbook definition, no, I do not.
I think it's. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, degrees of prejudice. It just depends on who you ask. Trump does. I don't know. I think Trump, his personality type wise, is an ENTJ. He just Trump loves whomever. Trump loves whomever is nice to him. Doesn't really matter who it is. That's my take. But go ahead. I want to hear what you're going to say, Greg.
Well, I think it's. Hey, I don't think it's not an answer. Honestly, I think it's more nuanced than something that can be answered like in a 60-minute or 2-minute or 60-second or 2-minute soundbite. But I'll give it a shot here. I think it's. I think personally speaking, I think there's plenty of evidence from and there's plenty of corroboration from people such as Noel Casler, who was a producer who helped to produce and worked very closely, with Trump on the set of The Apprentice, and he has his Twitter. You can find him on Twitter at Noel Casler Comedy, I believe is his handle, and he's very outspoken about like Donald Trump casually using the N-word. He says there's all kinds of tapes that have not been exposed, as far as sat on by, say, the Mark Burnett's of the world, combined with other people who might have a vested interest in running and not of Trump, colorfully and regularly, casually using, the N-word, certain colorful racial language. And there is the aspect of him and Roy Cohn, who I could see somebody like Roy Cohn as being like somebody who had really hardcore bigoted tendencies, as far as being indicted or charged by the federal government with, or by being charged with, discrimination in Trump housing authorities in the early 70s. Outside of that, though, outside of Trump's personal feelings, which honestly, unfortunately, this is an unfortunate fact of the reality, are likely shared by a significant percentage of the American population. This goes across racial lines too. It's not just simply Caucasian, European, white Americans that share hostilities towards people of other groups. I mean, this is very much more known than a lot of people would publicly admit, the level of like people who share what would be considered bigoted tendencies as far as race goes. But as far as the actual general definition of racism, I would agree more with your perspective on it, John, that like Trump, Trump he loves green, the color of money, and he loves power, and anybody who can help him get to that is an ally of his. And so, for example, Trump talks about like, his blacks, for example, maybe the Candace Owenses of the world, or maybe somebody behind the scenes like a John Blackwell, Ken Blackwell, it's a matter of like, you're useful to him as long as you can do something for him, or as long as you love and praise and care about him. So, for example, I'll give an analogy on this. Black football players, college football players, who by and large are not going to vote for Donald Trump, if they're at risk from something like COVID-19, screw them. I'm going to bring football back so that try to win votes in the Midwest from people who love their Big Ten college football. So I mean, I think that's how to look at it. But also there's one more factor to be taken into play here. While you have this like constant lip service and pushing for like the black vote or the Hispanic vote by the Trumps of the world, the Republican National Convention, there were a lot of black speakers who were touting how great Trump is and all this and that. Meanwhile, there's this whole other aspect of things, and this is something else I thought we might get into in this conversation, John, and that is the whole controversy over the Proud Boys question at the presidential debate, when Trump was asked about the Proud Boys, and he told him, stand by and stand down, or stand back and stand, basically not condemning them in the slightest bit. And the Proud Boys, by definition, is not a white supremacist organization. No. That is misleading by the media, because when you put that out there, you're able to have like, the non-Caucasian spokesperson for the Proud Boys can come out and say, we're this, but that's not the issue. It's not about literal white supremacism or whatever you'd call that with the Proud Boys. It's about what they represent, and they represent a very specific. They represent chaos in this country. They represent domestic turbulence and domestic chaos, and creating a chaotic domestic situation along with the left-right paradigm of these forces on both sides of the political aisle that are put out there. And Trump understands inherently, because this is a big part of the right-wing culture, is how to play to the grievances of, say, the white population and of and people's grievances, and people, a lot of cases, inherent conscious and subconscious racial biases. The Donald Trumps of the world and the Council for National Policies of the world know how to play to those prejudices. So while somebody like a Donald Trump may not be your conventional definition of what a racist is, they know how to weaponize the hell out of race issues to appeal to multiple sectors, whether it's the appealing to those who think that the Democratic Party is a modern day slave plantation, or you're trying to appeal to the disenchanted, conservative, white conservative American who feels like that there's too many damn brown people in our country. They know how to appeal to these biases and these prejudices in ways that I think are even beyond like the scope of how you and I can understand.
Well, yeah, but Biden's no better. Super predators, you know what
Absolutely
I
not.
mean? And also Biden's going to play to the guilt of like white upper class housewives, for example, and make them hate themselves. I mean, when you're discussing race, no one's ever going to win. There's no winners. There's always going to be losers. Someone's going to get offended when you start talking about it. You know what I mean? So
what's interesting, John, is that.
No, I was going to say one more thing though. Is that I see what you're saying, but I'm not a fan of Trump any longer, and I can see through a lot of the narratives that are being played, but there are also narratives that are being played on the left too as well, by people like Biden and Harris, because I see someone like Nico House on Twitter who's not going to vote because Kamala Harris, which she was Attorney General, right? Not of the United States of America, but under
California.
California, yes.
By the way, received donations from both Trump and Steve Mnuchin. Those should probably be looked into.
That is true. But she jailed an innocent man. So I see a lot of progressives pushing back on that and not liking Kamala Harris. And I see, Biden, of course, making, talk about super predators, and, Biden himself has some
Actually,
degree.
Clinton said super predators. I believe Biden's damning quote was, we don't want our schools turned into these racial jungles.
Yes. I think he mentioned super predators too as well, but the Clintons
He may have.
But the thing is Biden is placating to upper white elite liberals, like as being like this bastion of I care for you, right? But he doesn't. I mean, I always looking better as a class argument, the 99 versus a 1% in a lot of ways, because you take someone like John Kenneth Blackwell, for example, African American, Belay Society member, Council for National Policy member, Council on Foreign Relations member,
board member of GINSA,
32nd degree Mason. But the thing is he's accepted a lot, again, because of the class and the power that he wields. And I don't know, it's just, to me, it's just the way I look at it. I guess it's they want us to be divided. The elite want the United States to be divided between many different lines. Race, gender. Think of it, religion. When in reality, it should be us holding them accountable. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, this is, you're right, what's going on right now, and this is the unfortunate thing of the moment. When I'm sitting in the car with my mom while we're working together and we're listening to conservative talk radio, she supports Trump. She really puts a lot of stock in like Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity, and she likes Trump. And so I try to talk about this when you're in this environment, and what you're saying is so right here. It's like where like there's such an effort to divide us right now. I think the country right now is probably the most divided I've ever seen it. Of course, I haven't been around that long, but like I can't think of a time like in our modern history, and I imagine a lot of people who are older than me would probably think the same thing, that where we've been more divided as a society as far as like just and so nobody is trying to change that. Whether you're listening to the Rush Limbaughs and Sean Hannity's of the world who blame everything on the Democrats and on the left,
Yeah.
and regardless of what you think about, regardless of where you stand on the political aisle, there are some bad ideas that are not so bad that have come out of more progressive liberal ideology, just as there are good ideas that come from the right side of the political social spectrum. And then you have the flip side of that, where everything's blamed on Republicans, and there is an effort at play, like to make America out to be this collectively bigoted, racist society that just wants to, oppress and discriminate against everybody who doesn't look like a Caucasian, brown-haired, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Caucasian American, and so there is we are constantly divided and it's going on at such a, I would think, an unprecedented level at this point. Unfortunately, President Trump is perfect for this moment, as is the Biden-Harris ticket. And going back to what you said about like the problems with Biden's history with race relations and all that, and then Kamala Harris as an Attorney General of California who served the moneyed financial elite powerful interests rather than the people, the poorer aspects of the population that she claims to speak for now as a vice presidential candidate. This is why one of the major offensives that have taken place in the age of Trump is this whole idea that this is why things like people, a lot of African Americans, other people, see through the lies of the Democratic Party and the false promises and the failed policies of like the Democratic elite, and the fact that the Democratic elite is directly complicit in this moment that we're in now with Trump and this unprecedented divisiveness is going on in our society, and people have been able to see through that, which largely is a large part of the reason why Trump was elected. And that's why you have movements going on right now where you have the weaponizing of race and the idea that the Republican Party of Donald Trump and Mike Pence, and you mentioned Ken Blackwell's of the world, is the actual place where like all Americans, regardless of skin color, can go for opportunity, the colorblindness of the Republican Party. And the reason why that myth is able to prevail is because of the fact that this Democratic establishment is so corrupt and dishonest, and has left so many failed promises to the people over the years that, like, that's why this is why this has been able to perpetuate right now. I think that's a big part of the reason why is the problems with people like a Biden and a Harris. And sensible-minded people are going to look at that ticket and realize they don't mean what they say when they say they represent us.
No, they don't. And I mean, within a society, you're always going to have differing degrees of prejudice, sadly, racism, and in other aspects. The problem is we can't discuss it any longer. It's become too taboo. No one can have an honest discussion about any of these topics, because no matter where you stand, it'll be politicized and you'll be shamed. No matter what your personal views are. I mean, that's where we're at this given moment. They've radicalized it so much on the right and the left that people are just gonna go after each other. And I mean, and so like you mentioned, you got the Proud Boys on the right, you have the 3%ers, you have other various militia groups, and then on the left you have Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and that's one. And the thing is those groups can peacefully protest, but they can also riot and cause acts of violence as well. And you can see that on both sides. When the 3%ers came here to Fayetteville at the rally that was going to be the hashtag Free the Children rally here, I really thought something was going to happen. They had the catalyst for everything, and I did a video on it, and praise God, nothing did. The 3%er, everyone was peaceful march. So, the thing is even though the 3%ers, they want to overthrow the United States government, they're looked, as like this kind of like patriotic, white nationalist, like terrorist group, right? But nothing happened. So that's where we're at right now, is the radicalization of America, and it's been going on for 4 years. or even maybe you could even argue 6 years at this point.
Yes, I agree with you. And in going back to even going back to the question, it's like, no, the Proud Boys are not like legitimately like what this definition of white supremacism is, but they represent something much deeper than that. And you're not getting any kind of honest perception in the media, as we know, within our media landscape, either in the mainstream media or what we know and pass as the alternative media, on any of this stuff. You're not getting an actual perspective on, like, Antifa or Black Lives Matter, or even within the mainstream media that's said to be so hostile to Trump and Republicans. You're not getting an honest perspective on, like, the nature of the actual groups and organizations that are, these Proud Boy style organizations, and these and a lot of these alt-right style alt-right groups that went to Charlottesville, for example, epitomized through things such as the Daily Stormer and the Richard Spencers of the world. You don't get any type of real serious analysis of what these entities represent, and so people still by and large are largely left in the dark about it. And because people are left in the dark about the realities, I think, of what is represented by these entities, instead of having actual serious conversations about, like, the extremes of our society, which I think have largely been designed to be this way, they're manufactured extremes to further divide and split the public apart in an effort to, like, ultimately, I think, in many ways, destroy this country from within. Instead, you have people, instead of thinking critically and logically about these threats, instead they're thinking very emotionally, and there's the fear factor. I mean, we still have, after 150 years, the Ku Klux Klan is still looked at as this boogeyman organization. You can still trot out David Duke every 3 to 5 years to scare people. And so you don't have any serious, honest discussion about what these extremes in our society represent on either the quote left or the quote right. And people instead are driven by fear and anger rather than by any type of serious, nuanced, rational conversation. And you and I, we're not innocent of this either. We fall into these traps ourselves, and it's very hard to avoid them, especially when there's a lack of serious conversation and discussion about honest conversations about what these extreme entities actually represent and how real they are versus the manufacturing of them.
I mean, I could tell you too, when I saw the 3%ers there were quite a few African American 3%ers. Just saying. Saw quite a few. So,
and they're able to use this false perception of, like, everything is white supremacy as a means to actually bring people into their folds. And what they ultimately do is that, on one hand, they will play off of, like, racial stereotypes and prejudices and resentments, but at the same time, it's still under this, they're not, the media, every time they throw out white supremacists, sometimes I think it's done by design and on purpose as a means to deflect and blame. It's ultimately rendered ineffective among a very large portion of the population. What I would ultimately argue is that these entities actually likely represent something even much darker and more sinister than even, like, white supremacy as we're supposed to believe it represents.
Yeah, true. Did you see where Trump's going to host the Rush Limbaugh show tomorrow?
Oh, I heard that today. Yes, oh my gosh, it's going to be an online virtual rally, basically. He can't publicly hold rallies. He's going to do a virtual rally on the Rush Limbaugh show. I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to look at this as a sign of, like, this is a sign of frustration and fear that things are not going the Trump campaign's way in terms of this election, or if it's something else altogether. It might be a combination of things, but I mean, something like that promises to be quite the spectacle, to say the least.
Yeah, I'll love actually turning in to listen to the Rush Limbaugh show tomorrow. The first time in years, just to see Trump.
Our friend, totally not racist Tucker, Mark Stein, was filling in for Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, Lord. How did that go?
It was just typical Democrats bad, Republicans good. Everybody's out to get Trump because liberals, loony liberals, orange man bad, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, did you see, G.S. Crippler brought it in the chat, but did you see how the media was trying to push that the FBI foiled a militia plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, but it turns out that they were anarchists. They were a loose militia, if you can even call it that. It's the narratives they spin to get us divided. and get each side up in arms and okay. So there was a stream that I did with Billy Ray Valentine called State of Disunion, and I kind of towards the end of the stream I got kind of upset, because I don't. They've been talking about, Greg. They've been talking about a civil war, which would be us versus the elite. Maybe the UN blue helmets would come in to stop everything. But they've been talking about that in conspiracy culture for decades. Okay. Yeah. But now, depending on who wins, either Biden or Trump, and the protests and riots that may happen after that. Is there going to be any de-escalation? Could this truly turn into a civil war of the 99% tearing each other apart? Is that possible?
I hate to think like this, and I try to remain optimistic. My co-host Jeremy Roth-Kushel, he's very good at looking at the bigger picture as far as like things that we can be optimistic about in terms of like even things that are reason for optimism, as far as like looking at it from like what Jeremy likes to look at it as, from the perspective of what he calls the radical middle, as far as his views on as far as current events and the outlook of the world and all that. And so I do try to stay positive and optimistic, but at the same time we have to entertain worst case scenarios. I mean, we have to try to stay positive and optimistic as a means to, like, for our own sanity, not to lose our own minds, But at the same time, though, we also have to be realistic, and we have to look at the worst case scenarios. And one of the worst case scenarios we can look at, 2020 has already been an unbelievably unpredictable year. Look, even in the last 2 weeks alone, so many things have happened. We had a president with a potentially deadly illness who was away in Walter Reed Hospital. There's so many things that are happening at such a crazy rate of speed right now that, like, you cannot predict from day to day what is going to be going on. And Lord knows what is going to happen after November 3rd, when we are primed for the first time, I think, in our modern history, for an election that nobody is likely to accept the results of.
No.
And so I don't know, John. It's like, I don't want to think really negatively and really pessimistically, but when you're realistic, try to be realistic and look at the worst case scenarios. There's really nothing that can really be dismissed at this point as far as something that could happen. And you do have promises of, like, there are all kinds of statements that are being made. I don't know how much of it is real and how much of it is grandstanding by people with positions of power and influence within our political system, within other aspects of our society, that are making all kinds of statements that would point to chaos in the aftermath of this election. But I don't know where it is grandstanding and over exaggerated hype, and where it's actually real. But we do need to stay grounded, and we do need to look at some of these scenarios of things that could get ugly here. And I don't know how bad, but this is something that cannot be dismissed. And I'll say this, John, I will say this matter of factly. If we have 4 more years of Trump, there's no way that things do not get chaotic. I don't know if it's going to happen immediately, but if there is another Trump administration, things are going to get chaotic.
Especially if nothing ends up happening, which my belief is it won't. That's the only way. When Trump gave it away when he said you're not going to see socialism in United States being a socialist country in your lifetime as long as he is president. Once that happened, I knew that it was likely that Trump's going to win, which I believe is what was going to happen. Okay? And then in 2024, someone with a huge socialist agenda like Michelle, my Belle Obama, is going to be elected president. And then by then, we'll probably be in some war, I would assume. I don't know. We really don't know. We're kind of speculating at this point. You know what I mean?
Well, all we can do is give guesses and educated, hunches and guesses, educated guesses. That's really all we can do, because anybody who says they know what is going to be going on, like, who knows what our society is going to look like 3 or 4 months from now, even 3 or 4 months from now, much less 5-10 years from now, they're lying because, no, we don't have a way of knowing. And
how crazy it's been this year, 1 or 2 weeks from now, who the heck knows?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we still have, John, we probably still have some quote October surprises still to come in this, in this lead up to November. I like to think, I don't know. I mean, in terms of our modern history, I have to think this is kind of an unprecedented, of a domestic situation without precedent. I don't know, maybe, but it seems like it. And we don't know where we're going to be in a few months. I mean, we really don't. I mean, we did not know in December of 2019 that the entire global economy would shut down all in one moment. So.
Oh, Deadline accidentally published a story about Pence getting the coronavirus. Wonder what that was about.
Interesting. But we don't know where we'll be in a few months.
I have no idea. I'm worried now more than I have been with everything that's gone on this year. You know what I mean? I always thought we would just kind of coast by. They take more and more of our freedoms away. Slowly but surely, but now we're like a frog in a boiling pot of water and the heat's been turned up. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
I mean, we're definitely going to get some sort of restriction of rights with the coronavirus and the vaccines and Palantir being involved with the tracking and probably like some sort of eventually vaccine or, license or passport that you could show for public travel. I mean, people have been speculating how far it's going to go. But I expect us to lose some rights that we will never get back. Stanley McChrystal putting out the new normal. Something's going to come out of this like the Patriot Act. And how those were never really, truly rolled back either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's just a moment, though, where you just can't be certain of anything anymore. I mean, it's just... and I feel like this is something, this has been building for a long time, but I mean, it's kind of reached a fever pitch right now. And I mean, and who knows, maybe this is going to be much ado about nothing, but when I say much ado about nothing, I don't mean that nothing's going to happen. Maybe some of these aspects of things are being overblown, but if we're being realistic and we're thinking about what we've already seen this year and just how divided our society is, we really cannot dismiss any possible realities at this point.
No, not at all. Who do you think's going to win the election? You got Trump or you got Biden?
Oh boy. I was very certain about a month or so ago it was going to be Trump. Right now, John, I don't know. It's like when I make deliveries and I deliver to a lot of houses and a lot of residential areas, and for the longest time we were seeing almost nothing but Trump signs. Now you're starting to see more. And I don't know how much this actually means. This is out like in some of the suburban Kansas City, Missouri, basically. And now you're seeing, I'm seeing more Biden Harris signs. I just think, John, that like I was very, very certain, like, that Trump would win, that somebody like a Joe Biden cannot win. Right now, John, I'm not very sure, but I honestly, I can't, as far as who would win an actual fair election at this point, I honestly don't know. I just know there's going to be a lot of shenanigans going on, most certainly, and a lot of chicanery going on behind the scenes. But right now, at this moment, John, I was very inclined to say Trump not too long ago, but at this point, I can't confidently say that anymore. I don't know.
I still think Trump, as long as we have the true president of the United States, William Pelham Barr, still being Attorney General and still alive. And not dying of the COVID. And we have the vote rigging fraud, John Kenneth Blackwell, saying Trump has the best ground game in 30 years, and them pulling ads out of Midwestern states, which some people will say that's because they don't think they're going to win those states. I would say otherwise because the plans are in motion. I still think Trump's going to win. I do. I haven't changed yet. I still think that it will be given to him.
Well, go ahead.
I think he'll win the Electoral College, but he won't win the popular vote.
I could, and I think from that regard, you're saying it's being given to him. Absolutely, I think it's being given to him because once again, as I talked about before, under the guise of exposing and hating all things Trump, I mean, Trump is being enabled and covered for every step of the way in terms of the actual criminal nature of what's going on with this operation. So in that regard, you might be right about it continuing to be given to him. I just think right now, though, I mean, maybe I just can't make a definitive statement one way or the other right now because I'm really really not sure. But you brought up something since you brought up Ken Blackwell's name again. One of the major things that's been driving like the conservative media narrative over the last several months is basically Donald Trump has already promised that, and I think the Democrats are going the same way, even though historically in 2004 with John Kerry, and then even in maybe say 2016 where Hillary Clinton didn't contest the election results when she probably could have if she wanted to. Democrats have kind of had a history of standing down, first to Bush and then to Trump. But the right-wing media narrative for the past several months, and you know this as well as I do, John, is entirely built on the premise that the Democrats are doing everything in their power to steal the election, and any type of result other than like Trump winning in basically a landslide cannot be accepted because there are these unprecedented, constant, nonstop attempts to steal the election. Everything through having dead people vote to having fake mail-in balloting vote. So it's very interesting to me that we have like throughout this right-wing media narrative political party, as far as the Republican Party, through the Ken Blackwells in 2004, the Karl Roves, and the now deceased Michael Connells, and in 2000 through, say, the Brooks Brothers riots and all the shenanigans that went on down in Florida to ensure Bush illegally won Florida in 2000. It's interesting that we have the party that is there's actually very strong evidence towards actually having stolen presidential elections in the past 2 to 3 decades, is out there saying that the other side is going to steal the elections. It's the Ken Blackwells of the world, the Karl Roves of the world.
Now, Greg, my friend from George from CavDev.org has shown how the Democrats have also stolen elections too. To be fair.
Well, are we talking about Kennedy, or are we talking about other elections?
Other elections other than Kennedy, yes.
I'd have to see that. I'd have to see that evidence.
He's a progressive. So
yes, but I mean, as far as like, we can document like the 2000 and the 2004 elections and the information. It's very insulting to my intelligence. I'm not discounting anything that George has put out. I have to see that evidence for myself, and I'm not discounting or dismissing anything that any of the work and research that he's done. I'd have to see it for myself. But I mean, I know that like the GOP has stolen a presidential election or two in my lifetime.
No. I mean, George obviously says that and believes that. But I'm saying the Democrats have two. This is my caveat to that.
Yes, but in my lifetime, I've seen this, and it's very insulting for me to have the Karl Roves of the world coming out there and all their media surrogates and mouthpieces coming out and saying that the Democrats are going to do this and they're going to destroy the integrity of our electoral systems. I believe Tucker Carlson and Judge Jeanine Pirro put it on his Fox show. I mean, it's very, very insulting to me. And once again, the players that did this in 2000, did this in 2004, are right there all coalesced around Donald Trump in this moment.
And they were in 2016 as well.
And they're all telling you that the other side is going to steal the election from you. It's a problem for me. And I'm not taking anything out of from the Democrats out of consideration here. But I mean, it's a major problem for me when I see the party that is sitting in power right now, that is putting out this message to everybody and making millions and millions of people believe this without any type of skepticism or any.
When they have John Kenneth Blackwell and Karl Rove involved, that's the problem.
Yes, indeed.
Is that's the arrogancy and the irony that you have John Kenneth Blackwell and Karl Rove telling me that the other side cheats.
Yes. And everybody from Rush Limbaugh to Alex Jones to QAnon is saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's a problem. I mean, and look, I'm more concerned about the party that has at this point, the people who have the levers of power at this point, that being the Trump administration. That is my bigger, more immediate concern at this moment. I mean, it's not to downplay
okay, but I got to tell you that the only way that the truth movement is going to be rectified, if we have any hope of anything materializing, and me and Bill Ray Valentine talk about this all the time with each other, Trump's got to win. And then Trump's going to do nothing. Either nothing's going to get done, or things are going to get worse, or there's going to be a war. That's the only way. Because if Trump loses, yes, they believe he's a God Emperor, and they believe that he won't win because of the white hats. But if he loses, it will always be what-ifism.
Well, John, that brings me to another one of the worst case scenarios is that, heaven forbid, Donald Trump were to.
Oh, don't say it. Don't say it.
Well, I'm saying, if you know where I'm going, if that happened,
Yeah,
oh,
I know.
man,
Just don't say it. Me and
it
Billy,
would make it. If this thing I'm thinking of were to happen, it would make it virtually impossible for us to make our cases ever.
Yeah, I know. If God forbid, if something happened to Trump and Trump was replaced by Pence, or Pence was replaced by Nancy. It's funny because Nancy Pelosi's going around, and she's like, Nancy Pelosi of all people, all right? She's going around, and she's like, we got to talk about the 25th Amendment again.
I know, John, that's something that I can see as being a lot of theatrics.
Of course. And then her going around, like, we got to talk about the 25th Amendment. And I'm like, well, Nancy, you got cognitive deficit issues. Biden's got major cognitive deficit issues. And Trump has less cognitive deficit issues than the other three, and the drugs and the COVID aren't helping anything. All right, but the thing is it's just hilarious that Pelosi has the gall to bring up the 25th Amendment. It's hilarious.
And honestly, some of the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, instead of playing into these theatrics, I mean, and look, once again, we know that they won't do it because they themselves are compromised and corrupted by a lot of the very same interests. But this is once again another consequence of a refusal to be honest about the nature of the false nature of this fake artificial two-party system and the corrupt criminals that are created and made out of it and put into the highest offices in our land. So this is another symptom of that. And the Nancy Pelosi's of the world are not going to effectively expose the Donald Trumps of the world, and vice versa, because ultimately, they would implicate themselves in a lot of their interests and in the process of doing that. So instead, we're going to get all these theatrics about the 25th Amendment and the and fitness of power and who is, who's to blame for all these people dying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's certainly no hard truth coming out of any of this conversation. But I think you might be right in terms of Trump has to be reelected in order for any progress to be made. As terrifying of a scenario, as sad as that is. I mean, that might be the case.
Yeah, but then again, I'm not going to enjoy if Biden does get elected. I mean, pretty much the takeaway from these people are not good people, Greg, is that neither one of them are our guys, and no matter wins, we lose. And it's been that way for every presidential election since the United States has been founded.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one thing is that there's we're going to have a day of reckoning. Our history from the very beginning is not this rosy image that has been made of it. And that's something, people are going to have to kind of come to grips with at some point, because that history is, is directly interconnected to where we are now as a country and as a society. And so, it's something though, I mean, we just have to continue doing what little we can, but we know, it means something. And so we can do what we can. And, there's other people out there that are certainly fighting for trying to be as honest as they can about the situation and the state that we're in, and trying to, propose solutions and hopefully try to shed some light in this critical moment as to what may really be going on. And we don't always get it right, but I mean, we always try to be as honest as we can be. So,
and give the truth is the way we see it. We can't get everything right. There's going to be at least 5 to 10% that you're going to get wrong, based off of one's own cognitive bias or the information that's presented to them. And it's tough, man. I mean, back, around January, I thought this might be a good year, right? And man, it's been one of the worst years I can remember since I've been alive. And I'm worried, man. I'm worried for the union. I'm worried for my family and my community. I'm worried for my friends, like you, Greg, and I don't know what's going to happen by the end of the year. I never thought I would really think about that. I know it would get worse eventually, right? But it's kind of like kicking the can down the street. You just didn't know that it was going to happen now.
This is extreme, rapid fire, just right now.
It's almost impossible to parse it all.
Yeah. And that's something I think that a lot of people in positions of power and influence rely upon, is that we're not supposed to be able to make sense of what is really going on. I mean, that's part of like the it's a very interesting. You've heard of course, the concept of a hypernormalization. That would be Vladislav Surkov over in Russia. Putin's basically chaos agent, and it's interesting. I see this society almost seems to be like there's like a hypernormalization on steroids. We cannot make. We're not. I don't think we're. I almost think it's like intended and designed for us not to be able to make sense of what the hell is actually going on.
So supposedly more than 6.6 million Americans have already voted. Now they claim that suggests a record turnout, but that might not be the case. It might just be that people voted, early because of COVID. I guess we'll see. I will say this. The more people that vote, the worse it is for Republicans. That has been shown. Yet election after election, that's what's up. So if you start seeing any indication that many people have voted, and that turns out to be true, it looks like Joe Biden will be your next president.
Well, okay, John, I guess I'll ask you this as maybe we start to get close to wrapping up here. How serious do you take Trump when he keeps entertaining the possibility that he will not, if like he were to, let's say he were to lose, and it would be hard for him to push back in that scenario. No, say, how serious do you take Trump when he continues entertaining everything from like the possibility of like oh, I'm going to be president for this long, or even saying I'm not going to accept results, and basically telling you, I'm not leaving if I'm if there's an attempt to make hit me out of here. How serious do you take him when he entertains those scenarios and talking points?
It's possible, very possible. I mean, it was possible the last election, right? But then again, they teased us last election with there's not going to be a peaceful transition of power.
Oh,
there was.
Well, it's
so
interesting.
Who knows if they're teasing it again for this year, even though things are crazier this year than they ever have been. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, our society's so much crazier than it was even in November of 2016. But I look at that now, John. I look at that as like, I didn't look at it this way in 2016 because I was still kind of in the, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Trump or Clinton in 2016, but I was still under
voted
like
for Trump.
Yeah, well, hey, you know what? I voted for John McCain years ago. First time I ever voted. So That's when I was in Amway. So
okay, I think I voted for George. I should actually look up my voting record. I think I voted for George W. Bush.
Well, John,
I may have not.
We all do things we regret, John. I
think I voted for John McCain over Barack Obama in 2008, possibly. I can't remember. I know one year I voted Ron Paul. I think that was 2012. And I voted for Trump.
Well, we all do things.
Or I may not have voted in 20. I can't even remember. I need to look at my own. I can't. I guess I need to look at my own voter record and see. I may have voted for McCain. I may have voted for Ron Paul. And I may have voted for Bush.
Well, we all do things.
I know I voted for Trump. I can remember that.
Yeah, but that's you live and learn. That's how you learn. You learn by making mistakes and doing things you wouldn't do again. Like, I mean, for example, that vote for John McCain. I wish I could have that back, but you can't have the past back. You have to live with it and learn from it. And so, but 4 years ago, I was not where I am now. I still saw Trump as like a lesser evil. Especially with like I bought into like the idea of like, oh, this media and the elites really do hate this man, even though I don't like him personally. Boy, they really don't like him. And so when they kept threatening things like, oh, we're going to overturn the election through the Electoral College, or we're going to overturn the election through, I bought into it, but then like it never materialized. And ultimately, Hillary Clinton, from the moment she called to congratulate Trump that night, she stood down effectively. And, honestly, there was a case that could be made where there probably could have been some type of challenge made, and it was not made. And so 2016 was much ado about nothing, and 2020 might very well be much ado about nothing, because I could see Joe Biden as somebody who would stand down, much like his predecessors Kerry and Clinton did. But at the same time, though, we're in such a different place than we were in November of 2016 even. So it could be a different scenario playing out this time. I don't know.
Okay, so I'm looking right now. All right, I am a registered Republican. I used to be a registered Libertarian, though. And I voted in 2016 in the primary for Trump and in the general. I've always been a voter. Oh, no, okay. And I voted in 2012 in the primary. I think that's when I voted for Ron. No, actually, no. That was not the general election. The only general election I ever voted for was John McCain in 2008 and Trump for 2016. So, it's interesting. Oh, well. Is what it is.
Well, John, that's how you live and learn.
Yeah, I know, Greg. I know. No matter who wins, there is no voting for lesser of the two evils. You're still voting evil, and the world order still marches on. At least with Trump, we might get a few laughs.
Even then, though, it's like, I mean, I don't, I don't know. I'm just.
One final question, Greg.
Go ahead.
Are you a standards and norms guy like Billy Ray Valentine?
Well, what do you mean by standards and norms?
Trump's destroying the office of the presidency, at least the mystique around the office of the presidency that were the laughing stock of the United States because of Trump. So,
yes and no. No, and that I believe as far as if we look at it depends on what your definition of prestige is. If we look at prestige in terms of America ever, at least in our modern history, representing this bastion and model of integrity and doing things the right way, then no, Trump has not destroyed anything in that regard. As far as making us a laughingstock, I mean, honestly, it depends on who you talk to, because Trump does have millions upon millions of devoted followers and loyal fans and supporters who will are willing to take a bullet for him, basically. So I mean, it depends in that regard. But I will say also that I don't think in modern history we've ever seen anything like Trump before. I mean, this is a new dynamic in terms of our politics. That you have somebody who not only was not a politician, but Donald Trump's not a politician, so he's not your typical DC politician for sure, say the way our other recent presidents have been. But we do have we literally have an organized mobster as a president. And so there are a lot of I guess the norm that would be, in terms of what I think your friend Billy Ray is referring to, that would be destroyed, is that even I think Donald Trump has destroyed the facade of decency and any type of standards of decency and
But do you care about that, is what I'm asking.
Do I care? Kind of. I kind of do.
Yeah,
I care about that
care.
because I care about that in the regards of what Trump actually represents and what Trump actually is something we haven't seen before in our political system, and I think it's I do see Trump as representing and everything around him as representing a particular danger in the particular extreme that I don't think we've seen before in the presidency.
I want the facade to burn down. When I was watching the debate last night, it was between Biden and Harris. All I could think in the back of my head is, this is a proper debate and standards and norms.
Yeah, and I get that people think Trump is he's not like the rest of them because he says what he thinks and he doesn't abide by the norms. But even that is that's a created
But
artificial.
There is some truth to that, is sometimes Trump does kind of say things that he probably shouldn't.
Yeah, and okay, look, and that's interesting because that comes down to the topic of, is Trump this maverick or not? People make him out like Trump is this maverick who's defying the establishment. Well, it's not for the good of the people, but in some ways, Donald Trump, and that is one of the things that Donald Trump is a loose cannon who can and will say things that he's not supposed to say. He will speak out of turn, per se. Of course, the problem I have with it is all these people who take and twist that to, Trump's working for the best interest of the people.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I agree with you on that. That's the problem. But it does make things more interesting, in my opinion, where if Biden gets elected, it's just going to be more of the same, man.
You never had a president who goes on social Twitter rampages or whatever technology at the moment was used. There's never been somebody like that before.
It's enjoying. I mean, if the world's gonna burn, you might as well get a few laughs out of it.
I mean, John, at first I thought it was funny, but as the situation gets more and more serious, it's like, yeah, you'd like to laugh at it, but with the seriousness of the moment, like, it's like, man, it's still it's very difficult for me to laugh at any of it.
So you're a standard. I
funny.
never thought you would be a standards and norms type person, Greg. That's very interesting.
Well, to an extent, I guess I am. I see the people who like are genuine. I get the people who are genuinely alarmed with like what's going on right now. I mean, I understand that. I guess
no, I understand that, but as far as Trump, being a bull in a china shop versus standards and norms. Okay, so let me ask you this: would you rather have President Mike Pence or President Donald Trump?
I can't say neither, can I?
No, you have to choose one.
Good grief. Honestly. Oh God,
Mike Pence is the most ardent Zionist, C&P wonder boy.
The thing about Mike Pence is, Mike Pence would be, I guess, don't force me to say Trump, because Mike Pence is the worst. No, Mike Pence is the worst of Trump without the personality excess.
Exactly. You get the standards and norms, but you get all of the C&P.
I mean, Pence, and that's the thing, like, that's the thing, John, like, people, like, very, actual, like, liberal-minded people, as much as, like, you hear all, like, the hysteria about Trump, right? But, they realize in a lot of cases, a lot of those people realize Mike Pence would be worse than Trump as far as, like, actually running a smooth ship. And at the end of the day, don't be fooled by all the chaos going on around Trump. I mean, Trump, by and large, he doesn't read policy, but he knows what he's doing. And certainly the Jared Kushners of the world know what they're doing. But, there's still that idea of, like, chaos and unpredictability. Pence, you know what you were getting. And I think it would be the worst excesses of Trump without, like, the worst of Trump in the policies, the Trump's kind of CNP kind of pushed policies and perspective and ideas, minus, like, all of the excesses that come with a Trump world.
The C&P veneer, standards and norms, presidential. Now, I need to find a clip of all the news people saying standards and norms and presidential.
I will say a lot more. I think a lot of more people would. I think Pence also. Another thing about Pence is, this is one thing. Maybe with Pence though, there wouldn't be this cult of personality that would make it damn near impossible to criticize him either.
Yes. Now this is the very, very last question. We both got to go, and I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of Dudes Talking, Greg. Is JFK Jr. going to show up and replace Mike Pence as President of the United States on October 17th? Will that be the true October surprise? I need percentage odds.
No, it will not. I would say it's probably a less than 1% chance of that happening. And if it doesn't, when it doesn't happen, they'll move the goalpost and say it'll happen on Inauguration Day or something.
Now, Robert David Steele, everybody's favorite ex-CIA agent, okay? And he believes in sex slaves on Mars, all right? And he's Q-tard. He claims with 80% confidence based off of his sources, Greg, that it will happen. Okay?
And when it doesn't happen, he'll say it'll happen in March of 2021. Then he'll say it'll happen in October of 2021. And he'll keep saying how Donald Trump needs to listen to him and he can save the world if he would just listen to Robert David Steele.
Yeah, Lee Veltman in the chat said, how triggered are the Q-tards going to be in 9 days when JFK Jr.
Well, wait a minute. Wasn't Trump going to Walter Reed the Storm?
Well, some people said that he was in a submarine. It was the Red October, okay? It was the Red October. Me and Lee did a show on it. It was the Red October, the 10 Days of Darkness Red October edition. Okay?
Oh, Lord.
So,
yeah, as far as like, oh boy, JFK Jr., man, it's just.
And JFK
Jr. There's no level of like, there's nothing people will not think or say to continue to like, to justify something that they've fallen so hard for that they can't begin to like even take a little bit of projection and reflection. And they've fallen so hard for this that they will jump through so many hoops and mental gymnastics to continue justifying it.
Yeah, I guess you're right. And JFK Jr.
And the Robert David Steeles of the world know what they're doing, though. Robert David Steele, I think, understands and knows that he's selling bullshit to people. But, I mean, as far as the by and large actual true believers who push things like that, I mean, it's just, I feel bad for them. They're in a bad place.
Yeah, I don't really go after them as much because they don't know what they do. But there's the operators that are, they know what they do. The grifters and the operators and the LARPers, they know what they do. So yeah, we go after them the hardest because they got to be held accountable for their actions of laying uh, leading the American public astray. All right, tell everybody where they can find you, Greg.
Yeah, we're you can find myself and Jeremy Roth-Cushell. We co-host the Antedote. You can find us on YouTube at the Antedote. We haven't been uploading very much lately. We've had a lot going on in our lives recently. But as the 2020, as we get closer into like crunch time with this election and all the chaos that's sure to follow, we definitely intend on getting more. We definitely intend on putting much more material out here in the next few months. We also have a Patreon page if you'd like to consider supporting us financially at all on patreon.com/the Antedote. It's spelled the same way as the as our YouTube channel. And right now, those are the places where you can find us at the moment. But be looking out for us because we are going to be putting out. It's going to be much more coming from us than has been coming in recent months as we really get closer and closer to whatever fun awaits us in November and December on into 2021. So that right now, those are the links you can find us at. And thank you, John, for doing this, and thank you for continuing to do what you do.
Anytime, Greg. You're welcome anytime, both you and Jeremy on. I'm actually going to have Jeremy on in the next week or so. So that'll be a very interesting discussion between Jeremy and I. And we'll cover the next debate if it happens. Right now, it looks like it's not going to happen.
Well,
I'm sorry about not
also,
covering
though,
it last night. I had some things that were going on. But
as somebody said, though, Trump loves a camera, and he will not. He may not turn down an opportunity to appear in front of a camera. So we'll see.
I guess you're right. All right. Take care, Greg. Glad to have you as always, brother.
Thank you, John.
All right, everybody. That's it for this episode of Dudes Talking. These people are not good people. With Greg McCarron. Definitely go subscribe to The Antedote. I have been listening to Jeremy Roth-Cushell and Greg McCarron on The Antedote. I want to say 2 years now. And Greg is a dear, dear friend. A really good friend. And we agree on a lot. Way more than we disagree on. And I want to thank you guys for joining me this evening. And God bless everyone. May have a show or two. Saturdays, I'm going to release a recorded video that I did reading the Didache. And Sunday, Lee and I have a very, very special roundtable discussion on the troubled teen industry. Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. I cannot wait to do that. I've been looking forward to do this. I hope you guys will be there for us when me and Lee Veltman do it for the John and Lee show. And that's it. I can't really think of anything else. Might do another stream about the Finders. I got to redo the Marion Petty, the David Clinton Petty stream. And other than that, that's it. So, I might stream one night late. Might be tonight. May not be tonight. I might go to bed on time. Probably, I'm not going to stream tomorrow. And I won't stream next Monday. So, me and S90, I see you in the chat, MWC. We need to, we got 2 streams. One I want to do with Don Diligent on, I'm going to mispronounce the guy's name wrong. The Filipino Gold, I'm just going to call it that instead of, his name starts with a Y. I'm bad with names. And I think we got another stream that we got to do on King John III, S90, and all your notes you took down, breaking that down. Maybe we'll do that soon, one night when we get together. Of breaking down the thought known as Gregory Hallett, King John III. Lee is welcome to join that stream if he wants to. All right, everybody. Take care. Talk to you later.